So I have to say what I feel like many are thinking. Carol put into any other anime has serial killer vibes, and don't get it mistaken, I would say Carol is my favorite character in Tomo-chan is a girl, but the number of times you can look at her, and honestly if you showed the image to just a random fan of anime, they would probably look at that face and say, oh, is that a yandere? Or is this like one of those anime where it surprisingly gets bloody? And the fact that the final moment of this episode is her randomly coming to school with some Five Nights in Freddy's stuff going on, just so she can casually give a kiss on the cheek to her friend Mizuzu. I mean, there's something just oddly horrifying about such a sweet character deep down inside. And I love how much fun this anime has with the insanity that is Carol's overall design. But this was a fantastic episode. The past couple Tomo-chan episodes have been, in my opinion, an extra level above the general quality, and this episode's no exception. We get not only some spiciness between her and June, just trying to get the fanfics writing themselves, let's just say, but ultimately just in order to try to make someone a little jealous, as honestly, you know, they both very much want to be with each other, but there's that general fear, which is pretty much a common theme in this episode. But by the end, man, if Mom's whistle didn't go off, who knows what would have happened in that bedroom. Now, I do have a full live reaction to today's wonderful Tomo-chan is a Girl episode, so if you want to see my full uncut thoughts, head on over there and consider supporting. We have 4 episodes left before we say goodbye to Tomo-chan, and it feels like what this show is doing a really good job with, similar to an anime I really enjoyed pretty recently, even though it's been a little bit since it aired, it would be Horimiya. One of those shows that hit all the main points they needed to for a satisfying conclusion, while maybe you don't adapt every single chapter out there or every single moment. By hitting all the main points, you leave a show like that saying this was a worthwhile experience. And when you look at, say, the end of last episode, where you see our boy get so into this fit of rage, normally a show like this would maybe come back to that moment and focus in on some development a handful of episodes down the line. But this being a 13 episode run, we don't really have time to do that. So a lot of studios probably would just really shallow the whole thing and maybe not give an entire episode more or less dedicated to that relationship. The fact that they decided to do that, the natural transition point from the martial arts training and then just, I mean, our boy, he got a nice punch in on June. I mean, the fact that he had such force that he was able to do a slight cut on his cheek, I mean, I was taken back by that. I gotta admit, I was like, damn, man, that punch packed a punch if he was able to pull that off. But I like the fact that for an episode that, because if you look at the first half of the show, it was really Tomo's spotlight. June, what was he feeling? What was he thinking? It was up in the air. We knew, obviously, he had to have feelings of some way. We just didn't realize how clueless he was that he was actually convincing himself that it wasn't a confession. But by the time we got to the second half of the show, we're really seeing it from his perspective, so it keeps things a lot more fresh, because after a while, if you already know how a character feels and another character's being dense about it, the comedy can only write so many ways to make that amusing, and Tomo-chan did a smart thing by not letting that overstay its welcome. So now, the second half is more focused on the sidecast, and while they tell the sidecast story, they simultaneously progress the main relationship with Tomo and June. You can look at the moment with Carol as an example. So there was so many ways to take that scene out of context had anyone walked in that room, even prior to her jumping on his lap and straddling him. But the fact that you use that as this way of like, there's this jealousy, like, does he like Tomo more than me? Well, then I'll take June from her. And you ultimately see this whole scene. But by the end of that, he runs over to our girl's home and just is latched around her like a puppy. And the fact that as soon as she pops up by the door, he's just right attached to her. I love how in the middle of what is a side character romance focus episode, they were actually able to make them feel a little more connected, our main couple pairing. And the fact that he's recognizing I still have trouble just like looking at her as a girl, and he feels flustered, he feels embarrassed. And it was such a small aspect, but it was relevant enough to make the main pairing feel like it was progressing, as these two lovebirds ultimately end up in a fantastic relationship. I think it was so interesting because both Carol and her mother, we see them in two very different ways. Now, Carol we've known a lot longer than her mother, but in terms of personality, they have very extreme personalities. And the fact that just in order to try to see her vulnerable, we got to see a Carol that looked completely normal. And I think that's what makes her character design so fantastic, because I've said it so much, I think she's an alien, or like she looks like a doll. She just doesn't feel normal in the context of this world. And when you see her break down and cry, and then you get the realization that she was always smiling because that's what her mother told her in order to keep herself and others happy, you see the fake facade that was almost always on her face no wonder it felt artificial, no wonder it felt alien or doll-like, because it was mostly a mask. Whether she was happy or not, she was always Carol. That's how she was presented. And to see her crying on the bed, feeling like a normal anime character in the show, there wasn't the overly like rosy cheeks or the wide eyes, it just felt like a normal girl. So it kind of works in a lot of ways. I mean, of course, by the end of the episode, she's wearing her serial killer bunny outfit, and I mean, that's just Carol for you. But I like the fact that both her and her mother just felt human. They felt normal in those very simple moments. And even though the mother, she still has boy problems, the fact that initially, if we rewind when we met her, I mean, she looked at Tomo and was like, I don't trust boys. Oh, you're a girl, I guess you can come in. And by the end of the entire amazing scene, after getting headbutted and beaten with a feather pillow, she trusts him a little bit, but not too much. But I like it. I thought there was some great progression overall. And once again, I leave an episode of Tomo-chan easily able to recommend this to any fan of anime who likes school, romance, slice of life, and just good comedy anime, because it kind of hits a little bit of everything that I like about all those types of shows. And seriously, I really feel like it's a one-of-a-kind rom-com. I think when you look at what have been the most impressive shows in the past few years, maybe even going as far as 5 years, but at the very least the past 3 or 4, the fact that shows like Horimiya and Tomo-chan is a girl, they're doing things different. They feel familiar on paper, but the more you watch them, the more you just say, this is very interesting, this is very distinct and unique. And as someone who loves to have a good laugh throughout my episodes, every episode does that, but the fact that they actually progress the relationships, both main and side supporting cast alike, they're doing a great job in my opinion. I truly thought they were only going to start the progression of these two's relationship and tease it a bit, and then we'd probably focus back on our main pairing. But the fact that they did that all in this episode, it didn't feel fast-paced, it didn't feel like we jumped in there randomly, like given how last week ended to then how it transitioned initially here, they really just know what they're doing. Right now, the only other thing I really need to see more of is Mizuzu and her seemingly fear of losing her best friend and what happens when they get in a relationship. Does she feel like the third wheel? If we have an episode, whether next episode or as long as it's within the next 4, right, and they do something to seemingly resolve that, then if we get to the actual relationship with Tomo and June, I can easily recommend this as a 10 out of 10 anime that feels conclusive, well-paced, and just had a little bit of everything that they needed to. And honestly, I don't get to say that a lot, so my fingers are still crossed that they just keep on this path, because right now, they're doing a hell of a good job. But thoughts and feelings yourself on episode 9 of Tomo-chan is a Girl? Do let me know down below. Be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here, be sure to ring that bell so you can get notified when I upload on the channel, and of course, as I mentioned, I do have my full live reaction available on my Patreon. And while you're there, you can also get a video shoutout. So today, we have Slippers, rogueknight, Eleanor Bailey-Tufts, Spectra, Zuniga, Stillwater, Extrin, and Cardboard. So I appreciate the support, everyone. Please take care and have a good one.